Today on our Tech for Business podcast, Todd, our COO and CISO, and Anne, our Quality Assurance Analyst, join us to tackle compliance challenges people are facing, specifically when it comes to AI. We talk AI so frequently, and we're all very excited about it, but now we've got our tinfoil hat pair on today.
I represent that.
We love it. These are the things we have to think about and we have to talk about. So to start us off, whoever kind of wants to jump in, what are some of the challenges, or what is making AI so difficult when it comes to compliance? What makes it so different from other technologies? That's a big question.
It is. I'll take a swing at it of the first one anyways, and we can expand on it. But my initial response would be it's relatively new. And I kind of want to clarify that before I get too terribly far down the road. Most people are really aware of it with ChatGPT really coming on strong back in 2024. The irony is AI has been going on quite a bit further back than that. So as an example, the EU, most people know that for cybersecurity, they've got GDPR. They actually put their first proposal for AI back in 2018. That seems like a really long time ago, but it was adopted in 21. So it's been ongoing. So it actually has been in place for quite a while. And they're more of those broad stroke overview of what's going on in the world. But like I was going with ChatGPT, is the world has changed. And if you kind of look at it, they're talking about AI coming in waves, and the first wave was really a lot of machine learning, lots of data collection. And then the second wave ended up being this large language models where you're starting to be able to communicate it with it in normal human language. And then the next wave they're talking about it is agentic AI, which is going to be the bots are going to start to make decisions that are predefined. But because of that, it seems new, and they're just trying to, instead of having broad strokes, what do we really want to do with it? So like I said, the EU kind of started doing this quite a bit, but there is a whole bunch of others that are coming too. So California's got one. California tends to be the first in the US that adopts this type of thing, but there's several others that are coming down the pipe as well. But overarching, I think the concern is it's new, it's got a lot of data, and then it gets into privacy tends to be where everything goes from there. And that's where most of the concerns come from a compliance aspect.
I would say that's first and foremost, the privacy and security of data. People are really freaked out about how is this information drawn? What information is going to be seen, not seen? What are we going to derive from the questions posed? Where is it coming from? Are you looking at my health records? Are you looking at my HR records? Are those possible? And how do we keep those contained? A lot of the concerns, I think, kind of really bleed into each other too, where your privacy and security kind of bleed into that regulatory and ethical. Should you be doing this? No. Like if you're going into a ChatGPT to say, what is Ann Platson's most recent doctor visit? You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But I think this is like the start. The concern and biggest concern is that privacy and security, and really just a lot of the tentacles that come from that.
Have we ever seen this type of technology before? What I mean is these AI tools like the ChatGPTs, the Geminis of the world are so interconnected with this concern of privacy. Have we had this type of thing in the past? How did we sort of handle that from a compliance aspect? Or is this just totally new territory?
It's been built into a lot at a very small level into so many of our tools. At a tiny level, when you say, it looks like you've used this before, how would you like to proceed? Or remember me is not a real element of it, but when you say your Google search, it looks like you've done this before.
Yeah.
And that's not a true AI, but it's kind of the sprinklings of it.
Right.
It's been built in for convenience, I think, but not to the degree that the data models pull information at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree. I do find it somewhat fascinating. I agree. I think it has been building. It's been going on for a long time. It's getting more complicated. When it comes to similar types of technology and how it's been building is there have been a handful of things out there where you're seeing like the adoption is going at a similar rate. So like the World Wide Web when that first came out, I know you have to be really old like me to remember that, but that
If you
that
don't hear
adoption,
the fax machine sound in the back when you're dialing up,
right? But cell phones were another one of those things too. And again, I'm old enough to remember that those first cell phones were ridiculously expensive and the plans, you almost never used it. You like turned it off so you weren't using the minutes on it and whatnot. The adoption of AI is going at a faster rate than anything else. And so while I would say not exactly like this, it has been building, but you look at social media, I mean, there was a lot of privacy when that kicked off that people were just sharing everything. And then eventually people are going, whoa, maybe that's too much. Where I was going to make a little wisecrack is I actually was having a conversation with Anne and a bit of a tangent, but I was talking about how you have certain information that's available for individuals, names, addresses, etc. And I said, back in the old days, you used to get this big white book dropped on everybody's front step that had everybody's phone number, address, and everything in it. It's called the White Pages, and it was free. And everybody had access to all of it all of the time. Wasn't as easy to get to as a computer is, but we used to give that information out for free. So it's not completely out of the question. It's just the times have changed and the accessibility of it is greatly increased over time.
and at some point it is difficult to put the what back in the box. The it To your point, Todd, it's like having all that information out in the open. Any combination of some of those with, say, a employment history now would be considered PII.
Mm.
So it's a weird mix to say. It was an awesome discussion though, because I'm the person that's like, I don't want my address out anywhere for employees or others to see, and he's not wrong either that it's pretty easy to get, but should you? No. That, I mean, this goes in that ethical tentacle, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good thing too. I was going to kind of mention it as we're talking about compliance in general, and this is a bit of a veer. And I apologize if you had anticipated asking this question, but some of the things as we're looking at compliance and regulations, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, like some of the larger challenges are not just privacy. And I would put privacy by far the highest on the list, especially since these large models have so much access to it and they can reference it so incredibly quickly. But the ethics tends to be one of those things where you're seeing the regulations coming in because of it. It is interesting. So the previous administration had put in a executive order that kind of outlined what they wanted the AI framework to look like, and the existing administration revoked that because they're saying that they want the US to continue to lead the way when it comes to AI. But there is a lot of ethics that go into it. It's been a little bit, but I think we used to have, or I think we probably do have another episode of ours where we talk about AI and how you have access to it and some of the concerns with it, which get into, is it biased? Is it racially biased? Is it male biased? Is it demographically biased? All those kinds of ethic things play into it. And so again, when you're looking at the regulations, those are the types of things they're trying to put wrappers around saying, we got to make sure that you guys are doing good, right? I think the old Google phrase was do no wrong or do no evil or something along those lines. And that's really what we're trying to see from those regulations is, are there good ethical things that are currently in place that help us work through some of that?
For sure. We mentioned privacy and how AI is making that incredibly complicated. Is there anything, I think about banks, hospitals, these places that have this very sensitive information. I mean, what is the expectation? What is the sort of biggest hurdles for them who have this very sensitive data?
Yeah, it's and again, I'll go first because I started talking already. Too bad, Ann. Uh, most of them are in kind of an exploratory process at the moment. And when I'm talking to banks, what I'm typically seeing is they're looking to us to kind of help navigate it. And because it's developing so quickly, I kind of mentioned this agentic piece that's coming now, or we're getting into agents. They're asking, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What's that going to do? And it's pretty nebulous on a large scale. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been the big four audit industries, your PwCs, Ernst and Young, et cetera. They're putting together packages where they're bringing them to businesses saying, here, our agent framework will work with anything that you may be doing. But what we're typically seeing in a lot of cases, and I'll use an example for Mayo. Mayo is working with a lot of AI and bots as well. As the biggest thing that they've done is they anonymize their data. So everything that they're working with is now anonymous. And so you don't have to have the same concerns about PHI. And it's a really great way to do it. Now, that's not super easy, but once you've got that piece going and in place, you can really make a lot of headway with it. So examples of things that they're trying to do with it is they're using it in their cancer center. So they're working with it to bring the AI to spot things much sooner. And I think they were saying that the improvements are something along the folds of like 80% more accuracy in detecting cancer earlier, which is absolute insanity. But those are the kinds of benefits that people are really interested in, which is really driving why we're going forth from it. I'll take a pause because I've been talking a lot, but ultimately, those are the kinds of challenges, right? Do I need to secure it? What kind of information do I put into it? Can I make it anonymous so I can do more with the data I have, and so on?
I just to kind of continue on where you're going, Todd, I think the two biggest regulatory are the banking and healthcare that have these concerns. I say that neither have specific AI regulation, but they have the biggest concern for what the output or work input is for these. One of the key pieces in just looking this up for in preparation for our tech fund, the information bias for either making sure that the Todd and I have talked quite a few times about using common sense, and that's not really a great word to use, but trying to use judgment when you're looking at results from these AI tools that apply that judgment to try to see through any sort of bias that might have been inadvertently inserted without it. It does take a human to look at context. It does take a human to look at data that might, and if I use the historical data, we use the term historical data even in CIT, where you might know someone has a knowledge base feature, something about them that makes them unique and the best resource, but it would say that nowhere in an AI search. That bias might limit or include data that really shouldn't be part of those data sets. So that an awareness or a judgment, a review, that this kind of leads into that part where Todd's saying it is absolutely correct in using those to detect cancer. That's why we want to use it, absolutely. But knowing it and using your judgment, understanding that results do or may have biases, that we all have to review what we're pulling in and trying to get from the tools to ensure that there are the biases aren't there, and ethical concerns in trying to your example, Ted, was great in anonymizing. What can we do to to try to work with this rather than against, and all of those details are kind of encompassing both the regulatory banking and healthcare, HIPAA, and things like that. Um, I think a transparency too, and this goes back to how do we, as a regulated or not a regulated entity, start to use AI, making that transparency in saying these decisions or these results were from an AI tool, or this is how we should use it, putting the guide in place prior to, and it's again, it's hard to put it back in the box, but there is a point that you do want to say, be aware of these results, review these results. It's so easy for some of the data gathered and data sets to insert the biases and ethical concerns without much work, if you will. So just those are such huge concerns for both the regulatory that I was think top of mind.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some of the stuff that Anne's touching on is you are seeing that coming out in some of these regulations that are there. One of the things I will say is it will continue to evolve, but what you're typically seeing from a lot of the regulations is they're trying to do a couple things. And I kind of mentioned the data privacy, which is a huge thing. And it's typically top of mind for most organizations, but they're also trying to address the other things like I talked about with the ethics, but accountability of what you're doing. So some of the things that you're reading are exactly what Anne said is the regulations are saying, I think it's New York or somebody along those lines, that there specifically says, if you use AI, you have to specify this content came from AI. So you can't just copy it, tuck it out there, good to go. You have to specify this is AI generated content. Now, if an employee then transition this, I'll actually use this as kind of a good example. I think we've talked in the past too about people skilling up as AI starts to come into the workplace, causing a lot of fear of is my job going away. I heard an analogy that's talking about marketing and what that historically looked like is a lot of marketing people were content creators. So they'd develop the content, they'd get blessings on it, it'd get edited, and then it would go out. And what's really transitioning in the marketing world is AI is starting to be the content creator. It's quick, it's fast, it's accurate. And what's happened to the market individuals is they've now elevated to more of an editor position. And so now they're editing the content. And that's really what the stuff that you're starting to see. So you kind of get away from some of those types of regulations as you start to becoming editors of it and whatnot. But in the end, again, like I said, I think a lot of the changes that are coming is we didn't really anticipate that. There's new tools coming out, new ways of thinking about things. And because that's developing so rapidly, you're seeing the regulations tend to go quickly trying to catch up to it to a degree as well. I will say there is a lot of stuff going on with banking side that's using AI already. So trying to protect against fraud is a great example of them. The things that would be more concerning is, as Anne said, is if I started using that data to determine whether or not I should give people loans, that's a lot more concerning. Because there's way too much bias that gets put into that type of stuff. But as to the best of my knowledge, that's not currently happening. That doesn't mean it's being developed behind doors that I'm not aware of, but it is interesting. There is still a lot of good coming from it.
That I think really needs to lead a lot of discussions where it's absolutely natural to have a huge concern about using AI. I have been comparing it to however many years ago when people were saying, oh, we're putting stuff in the cloud. And the cloud was this fictitious thing that people were both excited about and very leery. And until it really is explained or defined or put your arms around what that means, people are like, no, thank you. I don't want any of our data in the cloud. I'm like, well, and this is why I compare it kind of is already. If you're using this application, this is like a cloud-based application, that kind of thing. This to me has a great parallel to people's perception of that it's just this gooey thing that, oh, this has AI, this has AI, this has AI. Like, I don't think that means what you think that it means. But let's try to talk about it. Let's look at you have several applications right now that have a real basic AI resource within it. Did you know that? Oh, okay. Let's look at what it would do for you. Maybe it doesn't make sense and maybe you shouldn't use it for your organization. Here are the possible benefits though. And really looking at that, I love the idea, Todd, that was perfect. The protecting and detecting of security incidents and in financial, that, and then the cancer detection, those are two of the best examples to say this is why it's good. It's that's we really should use this and help others understand why we really want to put parameters around it, not just say no for no reason or ban it altogether. We've had many people or organizations say we will not have that anywhere in our organization, and then after you talk a little through, you really do want this, but let's see what that looks like.
Yeah, excellent points. One of the things that we talked about before, but is worthy of bringing up again, is how do people get implemented with it and how do they start? And we've talked about, having a good objective. And so one of them that I'll use as a little bit more of a mundane way, and I think it relates here just because it's compliance, is you can use AI for your compliance pieces inside your organization. So for example, at CIT, we go through a SOC 2 type 2 audit on a regular basis. And what you potentially could use AI to help you with is once you start creating some of the agents, you would have the ability to have it monitor your policies and then go back and make sure that the evidence that you're collecting matches what your policy says. So you can use it to do a lot of that automation. And again, you're seeing huge benefits for it. So one of the first things I'd seen on it was as it's being used in that world, you're looking at like a 40% efficiency gain of that by using AI to do the correlations for you. And so you're starting to see it get developed into tools and it's getting adopted really quickly. So another great example of where you say, do I have a business need? And the answer is yes, because this is the pain. But it just, in case anybody's ever gone through compliance, the evidence gathering process is incredibly time consuming. It just is. And so being able to use the tools to help you through that would be very good. Another great example of it is you still need the human element involved. So please bear with me when I say this, but you can have it start to do things too, like reading through all the regulation updates and what does that mean to me? So in case anybody's had the pleasure of reading any of the compliance and regulations out there, they tend to be hundreds of pages long. And so having AI do the first pass for you is incredibly beneficial to say, tell it to me like I'm 5, right? And then it comes back and say, here's the things you need to know. So again, huge benefits from AI, but you do need to make sure there is a purpose that you're doing it. And like Ann said, you don't just throw it out there and go, I wonder what will happen.
Yep.
For sure. So, we know that it takes a little while for, regulations to catch up with technology, but it is clearly coming. If I was a company that is a little bit apprehensive to using AI and I want to do it the right way and I want to be ready for these regulations that are coming, what are some steps that I can do, or what are some steps or things that I need to keep in mind as I am implementing AI? So we've talked about the why. Let's talk a little bit about the how in the right way to be ready for, again, these regulations that I'm going to be asked for either now or in the future.
I'll take the first swing at it just to kind of help set the table, but I'll use the EU's example as well. One of the things that they did is starting to get an understanding of what you're doing. And it won't be a surprise if you've listened to us in the past that we get heavily into the risk conversation. But 4 of the things that they lay out as categories of risks. And so you're looking at AI, there's a couple things that they're saying. Put your goals, objectives, whatever it is you're doing into these 4 categories, which are unacceptable risk, high risk, non-high risk, and was it specific transparency risk, and which ultimately this is plenty as good as fine acceptable. So those are the things where I'd start as saying, if I do this, what does that risk look like? Whether that's reputation, to the business, et cetera. What do those risks look like? Ultimately, where I'm going with it is there's kind of 2 things in the risk world that you're looking for. Is you've kind of got an appetite, which is the broad statement of, I think I've got this level of risk that's unacceptable and I just won't do it. That's my appetite in this scenario. I will not accept it. And then once you've got that framework, if you will, then you can get into the tolerance, right? I can tolerate this up to X, Y, and Z, and you can put dollar amounts to that. Or let's say the people person, if we were to have a level of risk of losing employees, what is my tolerance? I can tolerate to lose one person a year in this particular portion of the business, and that's acceptable. I can tolerate that, but anything less over that is unacceptable, et cetera. So those are the frameworks. And I know those examples don't really directly apply to AI, but they will help you start to get your head around where are we going with what we want to accomplish, and it'll start to get that in there. It'd also be nice to kind of make sure that you're paying attention to any of the regulations that may apply to you. So again, if you're in California, New York, et cetera, where these are emerging, you should be up to date on what that means and how it may impact you as well.
Like, I think it's the both the FTC and NIST have put out guidelines for AI. Just to dovetail on what Todd said, at I would say even higher level, it's kind of just putting the bumpers on. It's kind of a risk assessment is a guardrail, if you will. Let's think about this. What are we willing to accept? Do we want 2 layers of guardrail, or do we want one? Is it totally safe in a flat road? Great. Let's just no risk to this type of information. Go for it. It is really going to challenge people to determine what kind of data they have and what they and how they protect it, how how they classify it, if you will. A lot of people just have a big old bucket of data in their systems, on their file share, that kind of thing, that may not be as controlled as it should be. That's where these kinds of resources, AI resources, will definitely challenge people to ensure that they've assigned the level of significance, or the level of protection. How are we putting guardrails on this information? How are we limiting access, or where does that risk meet the access? Is there a big push to apply permissions in these settings, if that makes sense? Really, I guess that would all encompass data governance. This is applying all the labels. This is applying the permissions and how we use it. And before you apply the AI tool that might blow that out of the water.
Yeah. So again, a little bit, some specifics. There is a treaty between the US and the EU, and it specifically gets into, it is legally binding. I guess I should probably put that out there, but it gets into what the expectations are. So this is pertinent, right? And what it's basically trying to get into is that they want to minimize harmful AI usage. So it's making sure that the outcomes are holding up equality and privacy rights, and making sure that individuals aren't directly impacting it. So we're in late March, but just to kind of give you an idea of things that are going on. So if it is something that you're looking at, and I was kind of referring to that there's a variety of different areas where you should potentially be looking at it. The US ones, as I mentioned, it's pretty relaxed at the moment because the current administration removed the barriers just to try and keep the US competitive. But there are specific laws in California, New York, Tennessee, Utah, in Colorado at the moment, and touched on a bunch of other things too. So there is some ISO guidance out there as well. EU does have a framework, Japan has a framework, et cetera. And then there is a NIST one. For what it's worth, at CIT, we typically go with NIST because it's a lot broader and it tends to be accepted across industries. So whether it's healthcare, finance, et cetera, it tends to be universal. And so that's usually where we go. And is the AI risk management framework is the NIST framework. So if you were looking at a place
Just
to
rolls
start,
off the tongue, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. I mean, and if you ask me what NIST stood for, I have no idea. So let's throw another acronym on the end of it, which is AIRMF. Is that right? Anyways, so those are places that I would start. Is just getting somewhat familiar with it. Make sure do no evil. Make sure you're not stealing copyright information. Try not to target individuals, that kind of stuff. And then again, find a framework that helps you with your risk assessment and where you're going.
Perfect. As we kind of close out, I want to give you both a chance to share anything else, but kind of my final question is, going forward, do you think audits will change? And when do you think those changes, when should businesses be ready to show the work they've done? Or
Yes,
not?
without a doubt. Right, and anytime, sooner the better. But
Mhm.
it, I think the SOC process in general is the now prove it. So
Mhm.
being ready at this point is really key in knowing how to use this, setting your parameters, mm, fact checking, that kind of thing. But the now show me, but what have you done to show, to demonstrate that you have completed all of the things that you require or that you've set in place to limit or enhance however you're using AI? How can you show that you put those controls in place? I I think next to immediately, if that's
Yeah, I mean, that's almost exactly what I was going to say
Mhm.
too, is to answer the question directly. Yes, it's coming. It's just a matter of time. You'll see it in finance first because they're already getting audited. So whether it's SEC, if it's banks, et cetera, you will see that the regulators are going to start asking about it. And as I just fully agreed with Anne, the easiest way to be compliant is you start, this is a bit of a provocative statement, but you start by saying, we don't allow it. Right. And Anne kind of mentioned this earlier in the podcast too, is it's an easy way to start. I was just talking to a bank board last week, and that was how we started it, is we wrote their AI policy as implicit deny. And it got people really excited, which is exactly what I wanted, right? I didn't want a him and ha about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. I wanted an answer. Are we okay with it or not? And when I made a statement that said the answer is not, and
Mhm.
for what it's worth, to Anne's prove it comment, we had to go into the firewall settings of the bank and we implicitly denied AI access. So we went in, we implemented, and then we proposed our policy that says, nope, we're not using it. And of course, the answer is, well, but we have to. And we're like, great, we are now going down the path we want to. So building your policy is a great place to start as well. But it's a good place to start if you're in the bank industry or something like that, where it's inevitable. Having no plan is not good. I think in the HIPAA world, they say ignorance is not an excuse. So the fact that you didn't know that if something came in play and you're not compliant with it doesn't matter. You're still culpable. You don't have any options of getting around it. That is not an answer. And so if that's true, I would highly recommend starting with a deny, and then you'd start to build out from there. So for example, at CIT, that's what we did, is by default, we denied, and then we built a small group that started working on it. And then we expanded it out from there. And then we modified our policies to say this is okay. Our prove it for us is we're pretty open in a lot of what we do, but we do have some things that are blocked. So for example, I've mentioned in the past, we blocked DeepSeek, which is the Chinese AI similar to Chat GPT. But we don't block a whole lot beyond that. But we do make sure that everybody accepts the AI policy every time they go to an AI page. So well, those are some of the things that I think are important. Yes, it is a matter of time before it happens. And for some areas, I think it's highly likely. Like I said, when you've got executive orders overriding it, that'll temporarily make an impact, but it is coming. It's just a matter of time. So industries that I know will be affected are finance, healthcare, manufacturing. But I'd be stunned if something doesn't come from the creative stuff, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of concerns out there about stealing copyright data. You're starting to see things coming. I think in California, they outlaw deep fakes, so you can't use the actors as an example. And then the voice deep fakes is being outlawed in other areas as well. So those are the big ones that are coming. And so those will impact every industry.
Interesting. A lot of changes coming. So I think we will definitely cover this topic in the future. Maybe we'll dive a little bit deeper in the future about policy specific and taking steps there. Thank you both for joining us today. Style app recording. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this topic, please let us know. like, subscribe, or reach out to us at info@cit-net.com or head out to our website, cit-net.com/podcast. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.